So we spread the masa onto the tamal. Not too thick, not too thin, but just enough to cover it all up. Because remember, they're going to wrap around. And that's what makes the whole tamal. So there we have the tinga coming in. And you spread it out through the middle. Or you just wrap it. And in all honesty, the smaller the tamal, the better the meat to masa ratio is. My mom was just saying that if you ever eat a tamal and you get a cáscara, the peel that she is taking out right there, it's because the person was being lazy and just blended it all together. You got to get the pulp out, which is the color, and the skin itself goes away because look how thick it is. It still looks like the whole thing is there. Like all those are peels. ¿No el brazo, ma? All those are peels right there. So it looks like the chile, but all the red stuff and all the spice is already out, and that's what we have right here. So for the masa, we heated up this manteca. We heated it up. It was half of the pack, and then we threw the masa in there, and as you can see, it's really solid. And now we're gonna take some chicken broth and put it in there, so the masa has flavor. So as you can see, that's chicken broth coming straight out of the chicken pot. And then usually the masa ends up a little bit red because we use some of this broth here, and then that gives the masa a little bit of color. And if we don't use that, the masa will end up just white. So it can be either way. Sometimes when you're making them, the masa gets a little bit of color. Sometimes it's just white. We'll see which way it ends up this time. Yeah.
1, 2. They're going to think they're going to go in there. And you're going to surprise them with the third one. It's going to be
So we're putting the tomato and chile stock so the masa will be red. We'll keep mixing it and the masa will turn red eventually. This is the tinga with all the tomato and the chile is already mixed in. And after we already mix in, this is the tinga with the chicken. And then we have the masa. As you can see, it looks a little bit more yellow because we already added in some of the tinga stock. So all that's left to do is mix that, dough this by hand, and then we'll start making tamales. This is the first one that we had it in. As you can see, it's not really mixed in, so we're going to a bigger, adding some water, making it all red, and then we're going to a bigger olla and gonna do the masa a little more thoroughly there so it's all even. As you can see now, it has orange streaks through it. Like you can see orange a little bit more in other places than others. Same with up here, so we're gonna blend it some more by hand until it's done.
Está caliente.
So the dough right now, or the masa, is really hot right now, so it's hard to handle by hand because the lard was boiled before adding everything in. So my mom's just working it slowly, trying to get everything distributed. So the masa is really hard right now, and as you can see, my mom is just mixing it with the spoon to get some mixture in there. But traditionally, or actually once it cools down, she'll use her whole fingers. As you can see, her hands are dirty, but it's too hot for her to keep her hands in it the whole time. So she's going little by little and just mixing in the masa. And she's working between two pots. This is where it started out. This is where it's going, and she's slowly working it. It's kind of, and the seasoning and everything is kind of settled on the bottom. But the rest of it is also really red. Look at that. It's only been sitting there for a minute, but everything is thoroughly seasoned. And this is just gonna sit there and chill out until we finish this masa. And then after we finish the masa, all these corn husk tortillas have been soaking in water. So as you can see, they're wet, and this makes them pliable so you can roll them around and do everything. Marcela, are you gonna help Grandma make tamales? You are? Do you think you'll make these tamales when you're older, all by yourself?
Yes.
If you keep making them your whole life, I think you'll remember how to make them later, huh?
Just whatever it's called.
Are you watching Halloween Town?
Almost.
Have you ever watched this movie before, Marcel?
Somebody has.
You're in for a treat, sister. There's a bunch of them. So this is one of the final stages in mixing the masa. She's pulling everything from the bottom to the top and just kneading it with her fingers so it's all mixing. And that's how you make masa for tamales. And once again, that's the one we started off with the lard, the manteca being boiled down. We added some flour, some broth, and then we ended up with this. And now we have to combine it with this after being applied to those. So now it's going from this pot back into this pot, and we're gonna roll tamales, make tamales out of this pot now. Here's a tinga, here's the masa, and as you can see, it's about equal portions, or both, and that's what a tamale should be, about 50-50. So we don't count them, we just make a bunch of tamales, and it's about an estimate, but I want to say how many tamales will come out of this, Ma? 60, 100?
Maybe 100.
Maybe 100 tamales, so we got that going on. Not too thick, not too thin, but just enough to cover it all up, because remember, they're going to wrap around, and that's what makes a whole tamal. So there we have the tinga coming in, and you spread it out through the middle, or you just wrap it. And in all honesty, the smaller the tamal, the better the meat to masa ratio is. And these size right here are about the perfect ones. These can be a little bit too much masa, too much tinga. But when they're little like this, they're perfect. Because it's only the cylindrical outer sides that wrap the whole tamal. So we'll watch this one. It's pretty thin.
Himself used this talisman to end the dark ages over in the mortal world, and I think it's just the thing to tackle our troubles here in Halloween Town.
So here comes a tinga, and you just want a small amount in the middle of the tamal there, and it'll all extend throughout the whole thing. So we have a tube of meat in the middle, and then we have the masa from the top and the bottom, and then another layer that'll be just masa. And believe me, when you get some of that masa all by itself, because it has the broth of the tinga and the broth of the chile and the broth of the chicken, it's delicious. But pot of water, as you can see, there's a steamer plate in there. So the water only goes as high as the steamer plate, and then all the tamales are going to stand around the edges, and they'll cook in steam vapor. So tamales are steamed, not boiled, and that's why it takes them a little bit longer to cook, because it's just being steamed. Now you got to spread it, Marcin.
Yeah.
Use your fingers, it's the best way.
Okay.
If you want to be totally right, you got to have the day glow whistle. Now the purple dragonfly here, it's awesome.
Alma, how about you show her?
She's gotta learn, dude. Only one way to learn.
Marcy, look, like this. Look.
You gotta make it wider, Marcel,
Look, babe.
wider.
Mama, look.
Put
Go
more
like
masa.
Marta,
More
look.
masa, Marcel.
Just go like that. It doesn't look pretty. You're gonna eat it regardless.
It gets its shape once it cooks.
Exactly. And nobody will ever know.
Look at grandma's. Look at grandma's, Marcel.
Gotta make it happen.
Get a little bit more on the sides. Put it together.
You got to make it thin, Marcy. Spread it with your hands. Maybe it's too thick.
Pretend like you're making a tortilla with a blade at it.
I never made a tortilla before. Or quesadilla.
But you played with
What?
Play-Doh, right?
Yes.
That might be enough, Marcy. Just put some tinga in it and call it good.
No, it's separated, dude. It's missing a gap.
No, I got it. I got it.
Yes, listen to the name. Oh, wow. What a genius. Not too much. You're going to make it too thin. Stop. That's good. Now you got to make this one. You got to make this, all this come up to here. No, turn
Flip it around
turn
and go like this. Like this.
Flip it, look.
And go like this. You got to hold it and go like this.
Marcy, is this your first tamale?
I made
For this
some before,
season,
but
yes. She only makes them once a
You always
year.
forget, huh? You've been making them since you were like 3 years
That
old.
looks pretty close, Marcy. Make it.
How old are you now, Marcy? What year is this?
8,
You're 8, and what year is it?
2020.
Yep. Coronavirus can't hold us back.
Marcy, that's good enough. Put the thing in it and wrap it.
I don't know how to wrap it.
Put that meat in first, sister.
Like
So
this.
let them tell her, dude.
Go like this, and then you just go like this. Look.
So now that the water is at a boil and everything is steaming, the first round of tamales are going to go in. And the whole point is to stack them to where they stay against the wall. So the folded tail will be against the wall, of course. So it holds, and you're seeing her putting it there. And, oh, see, they're not always perfect, but you can see the tail there is what is turning it. So we're going to line the whole thing with tamales from here all the way around, and then some in the middle as well, leaving a small breathing hole in the middle so they can all get steamed. We're going to populate this pot and tamales in a little while. Stay tuned. So this is the first pot set to boil, and like I said, we just populated it with tamales, and we're gonna boil them for a while, steam them for a while, and after, how long does it take, Mom? About an hour, hour and a half, depending on your masa. The masa is the one that tells you when it's done. When the masa is firm and not runny or anything weird, you want firm masa, that's when all of it is done. So this is the pot, and we'll see the finished product. Third tamal, going into the second batch because the first one's already on.
She's done almost all these tamales, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's see you roll it, Marcy. That's perfect. Tuck it in for bed and then roll it around.
Accidentally.
There you go. Now fold the tail. That's how you make tamales. Good job, Marcy. Put it with the fold down. Put it fold down so it doesn't unfold on you. Good job, Marcy. A whole tamal under a minute. You going fast, sister? So checking on the progress. As you can see, they're steaming. They're not boiling. The water is really low. And that is the tamales. Here we have the first tamal. What's your opinion, Ma? Done or not done?
Yes.
It's done?
Yes.
Let's see how it cuts. You're looking for the dough and see how the dough is.
Delicious.
Oh, I need more space.
Delicious.
It'll work over here because there's a chair.
Carlos, come here.
Just walking.
Little ones?
There you go. That's how you make tamales.
All of them I think.
Look, puppy.
Doña Maria style.
They're walking.
Now they're off and they've been steaming for a while. As you can see, they're still steaming. And they're done. Just gotta let them cool a little bit so you can serve them.